Hey Southeast, I hope you are doing well. Hey, I wanted to share something that was in my quiet time. It's just kind of one of those verses that kind of pop out at you. And just to kind of give you a little bit of background, this is about King David, part of Israel's history. And so we kind of remember that, just a little crash course is that we watch Israel being brought out of Egypt, out of slavery, out of bondage, into the promised land. They go into the promised land, and then eventually they end up with kings. And the first king was Saul, and then it was David, because David was a man after God's own heart. This was a time in Israel's history where, yes, there were a lot of battles, there were a lot of all the stuff that go with kings and kingdoms and all that stuff. But it was at this point where David was king, and there was relative peace within the kingdom. And his son Absalom, there was a disagreement, some things happened, and there was a division in the kingdom between King David and David's son Absalom. And so Absalom started this conspiracy, and more people were falling in love with Absalom, and they were moving away from King David. And so eventually David leaves his throne. He leaves his kingdom. And as he's walking away, there's this moment. And this is what he says. This is found in 2 Samuel chapter 15. And they were going to bring the ark with David. So as David was leaving, they were going to bring the ark of the covenant with David. And David says, no, don't do that. And here's what he says. He says, if I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see both it and its dwelling place. So in other words, if I'm really supposed to be king, God is going to bring me back, and I'll be able to see the Ark of the Covenant, and it will be in its dwelling place, and things will be made right. But then he goes on and he says, but if he says, I have no pleasure in you, behold, here I am, let him do to me what seems good to him. And so he says, you know what? If I'm not supposed to be the man anymore, that's fine. God can do what he can do. You know, God is God, and I will submit to God. And so I just love the posture of humility that David had in that moment. And what's kind of interesting about this is that there were several psalms a handful of psalms that were written out of this. One of those was Psalm chapter 3. And just listen to this. This is when he was running from Absalom, his son. He says this, but you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. And so picture this. You have the king of Israel, and he just, he loses his throne, and he's walking away from it. And he says, you know what, if I'm supposed to be king, I'm just going to trust God. But then he goes and he's able to express his emotion to God. He's able to express his sorrow, express his disappointment. And later in that text that we read in Solomon, in 2 Samuel, we see that David is weeping. And so it's not like, whatever, I wanted to get out of this. No, he loved doing what he was designed to do in many ways. And so he was crushed. And it's just a reminder, I don't know what you're going through, but here's what I do know, is that God will elevate you in his timing. If you've been removed from a position, if you're supposed to be there, you don't have to worry about it, because God will bring you back. And if you're not supposed to be there, then God has other plans for your life. And so I just want to encourage you that whatever is happening in your life, that you can trust in him. But then here was the verse that stuck out to me. This was the moment. So he is weeping. He's at the Mount of Olives, actually, and he's crying over the situation. It's his son that has kind of backstabbed him. His son has backstabbed him. And here's this moment. One of David's men comes up to him and he says, hey, just so you know, there's this guy, and he, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. He says, hey, there's this son, your son Absalom, he has this guy that is speaking into him. And in that moment, David says this, and David said, O Lord, please turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. So what he's saying here is, God, you know the situation better than I do. My son is receiving this information from this other guy. God, if you would turn that man's words into foolishness to give my son bad advice. And it just got me to thinking, how many times we look at a situation in our life, some sort of angst that is happening, and oftentimes we want God to remove us from the situation, But in reality, what needs to happen is hearts need to be changed. And how often do we ask God to change hearts? So you might be in a situation at work where your boss is just running over you, or he might be ignoring you, or it might be difficult, or you might be in a marriage where you're not talking to your spouse right now, or you might have a kind of a broken relationship with a son or a daughter. And what needs to happen is not that you're removed from the situation. What needs to happen is hearts need to be postured towards God. And so that's what I want to encourage you to do today, is that as you're going through that difficulty, as you're going through those tribulations, is whose heart can you be praying for? In this case, David was praying that the man that was giving him advice would turn to foolishness. And what I'm asking you is a little bit different than that, is that maybe that you are praying for hearts of reconciliation. Hey, one thing to keep on in mind, this next Thursday, the 27th, so not this coming Thursday, but the Thursday after, the 27th, we have this incredible community concert. We would love to have you bring friends. We do have tickets. You don't have to have a ticket to get in, but this is a ticket to use to invite people with. So when you're here on Sunday, grab a ticket, use it as an invite, or you can just tell them to go to the website. And this concert starts at 7. We have Canyon Overdrive opening, and then we have the Eagle Rock Gospel Singers as the feature. Southeast, I love you. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week, and God bless.